amounts of money that are filtered into our government to make sure that certain people stay wealthy, that certain policies pass in order to keep Israel running a certain way. And all of this is really ignored when we talk about Democrats. But Democrats are absolutely a part of this in many ways. It is 1,000,000% an active effort on both ends. Okay? And when we hear people say, Amanda can't represent foundationally Black Americans, I want you to understand something. I don't care. I need to make this abundantly clear. I do have dual citizenship. I don't care. I don't need to represent foundationally Black Americans. I represent individuals with values. I represent individuals that want to make sure that we are moving with the most strength that we can. I represent folks that are intellects. I represent folks that have a heart. I couldn't give a rat's ass if I don't represent foundational Black Americans. I'm not here to represent foundational Black Americans. My mother is an immigrant, okay? My mother is an immigrant. So I needed to make it abundantly clear. You can get who you want to represent foundational Black Americans. I am a part of a legacy of Black radicals. And those Black radicals include folks from all different backgrounds, right? I'm from a legacy of radicals. And those radicals include people from all different backgrounds. And that's what it's actually going to take to see any type of shift in the future. And I want you all to know that the shift that you're talking about is going to happen in order for people to have a future for their children. Now, this person here says, stop speaking for Black Americans. I am a Black American. I am the descendant of chattel slavery in Black America. And for the record, I can speak for whoever the fuck I want to. I speak for myself. What you don't have to do is be here to listen. So, back to what we were discussing. Israel gets a literal stipend from the United States of billions and billions and billions of dollars that allow for them to have free healthcare. They have free, free education. They are able to have and possess their dual citizenship so that they can fly to wherever they need to fly. You want to say hi? Say hi. Okay. So they can fly wherever they need to fly when Israel acts up. So when people are saying to me, well, the Democrats did this and the Democrats did that. If the Democrats are not actively working to stop the American dollar from traveling across the ocean to Israel, then the Democrats are not working in your best interest. And I'm sorry, but there aren't enough Democrats that are working to do that. We literally only saw, 14 or 18 Democrats sign a piece of paper the other day to say, let's not send any more money to Israel. 14 to 18. There are 212 Democrats in the House right now. Speaker Jeffries sending a text out that says, send us more money so we can overturn the Republicans. I'm honestly disgusted by this for a myriad of reasons. $1 billion was raised for Kamala Harris. And with those billions of dollars, what they did not do was expand. Instead, what they did was try to go to the center. Now, what we can look at with Zohran Mamdani's campaign so far is that he actually had a significant less amount of money than his competitor. However, he was able to be successful because he aligned with individuals, with groups, with organizations that actively are already working. They already have networks of people who are in resistance work. They already have networks of people who want to be a part of coalition building, of community building, etc. So when we are seeing that work in real time, there's no reason to continue to support this effort of just give us your money and let us do what we want to do with it. That is no longer viable. It's impractical. And the consistent effort of Democrats in the past 3 days to put their time, their voices, and their energy towards speaking against Zohran Mamdani instead of educating us, the masses, on how this bill is working, instead of actually stating the ways in which this bill is going to harm, is really problematic. Now, I think there's also something really important that we need to point out. When these bills are being voted on, it is not simply just an individual decision. Many of these individuals are actually a part of, exactly, a party, okay? They are a part of a party. And we see that the Republicans are a very staunch party in terms of the fact that they stick together. That has been the case except for on this bill. There has been some folks that are like, nah, we ain't really with it. We ain't really with it. So they have had to curry favor. They have had to whip votes. It's called whipping up votes, okay? So the whipping of votes that has been going on doesn't just stop because they're in the chamber. When Hakeem Jeffries sat up there and quote unquote filibustered, I only put it in quotes because his filibuster actually allowed more time for Mike Johnson to continue to whip up votes. So this is, I'm going to say this one time to this real remotely review. You asking me what I'm going to do in the same breath that you just told me I don't speak for foundational Black Americans is exactly why anyone who is aligning themselves with being foundational Black American at this point is playing themselves. Because you can't simply just kick me out and then ask for my help. That's not how it works. You can't ostracize me and then turn around and be like, okay, but like, can you give us input? That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. And so you can stay here. However, you are not going to get anything from me. Okay? Now, the truth about Democrats is that we, as a people who don't consider ourselves Democrats, have to understand that the Democrats and the Republicans, my shirt says my mother is an immigrant. The Democrats and the Republicans were never created as oppositional parties. The Democrats and the Republicans were created in a nation where Black people were still enslaved. The parties that were present at the time of the Civil War were the Whigs and the Democrats. The Republicans were Lincoln's party. And they came through, and the Republicans were a party that was made up of a motley crew of people that, for various reasons, just wanted slavery to end. And it wasn't all for positive reasons. Like, it wasn't all because they were like, Black people shouldn't be enslaved. All right? Some of it was literally because they were just like, well, the slave owners are getting more money. So if the slave owners are getting more money, then we're not going to get more money. And so that was a part of what we call interest convergence. Interest convergence is when, even if your interests and my interests are for different reasons, if they align, then we can converge to be a force. So the Democrats were already in the position of power. There was the Whigs, and then you had the Republicans who had interest convergence to create coalition that said, we are going to challenge this institution of slavery. And they eventually were able to get in power. And then we see the Civil War happen. We see on the other side of the Civil War, Reconstruction. A lot of people don't know enough about Reconstruction to understand that that was an opportunity for things to change in the nation, and it didn't happen. I am of a theory that we are going to find ourselves within my lifetime in another scenario of Reconstruction, where the nation is going to come back to the table to look at the Constitution and decide what it wants to be. During the first Reconstruction, the problem was they let the Confederacy come to the table, even though they were no longer Confederates because they got beat, but they were literally committing treason, but they let them come back to the table and they got to be a part of creating the new version of America post-Civil War. That version of America was made up of Republicans and Democrats. And within the time frame of the post-Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement, there were Republicans and Democrats. And during that time frame, we saw the rights that Black people had gained on the other side of the Civil War slowly and, well, not slowly, but effectively stripped away. Black people didn't just go from slavery to Jim Crow. No, there was a moment in time where you saw Black people being able to get into government, where you saw Black people being able to get into positions of economic flourishing, etc. And we have seen over the expanse of that early portion of the century, those things get taken away as the more you saw Black folks getting in power. Not even getting in power. The more you saw Black folks getting on their feet. And then Jim Crow apartheid comes in. Okay? Now, the reason I'm giving you all this backstory is because America does not exist in a vacuum. And it is really frightening to me how many folks think that. They think that this election was going to save this. They think that an election that happened last year was going to stop the efforts that have been in motion from the beginning of this nation. Okay? We see the xenophobia that happens as divide and conquer takes place. We see the effort that is being made right now to convince people that they can't be, quote unquote, deported, even though we know that deportation is literally just a word that they're just bastardizing. And we have seen them bastardize so many words. Words like woke, critical race theory, woman. Like they just decided it does what it does when they do it what it do. Deportation at this point just means detainment. That's all it means. And they just passed a precedent in the Supreme Court that said that Donald Trump and his administration can detain any American anywhere. Actually, that may be wrong. They can deport any immigrant to anywhere. They can deport any immigrant to anywhere. So this brings us back to the beginning of what I was saying. And I hope you guys are still with me. In the beginning of what I was saying was that we see bills that happen as lily pads to other bills, right? These things are not just one-offs that happen and then are done. They happen to create more possibility for more things to happen. What this big, beautiful bill does is it essentially creates a huge chasm between the haves and have-nots. And it's going to be about whether the have-nots are going to be able and are going to be willing to put themselves through that chasm to close it. Are we going to be able to build a bridge with ourselves across that chasm to get to the other side? So when I see folks looking at this immigration stuff, it's the same tactic as what happens in the House and the Senate. The Supreme Court passing these bills, the Supreme Court passing these laws and not passing laws, but allowing for the precedent and the shifting of laws to make it easier for immigrants to be deported is simply just moving the wheel further to create a larger element of criminality. It's to create a larger element of criminality. And a larger element of criminality allows there to be more people in prison, which allows for there to be more slave labor. And cheap labor makes people rich. So the conversation here about Democrats is really important because I think not enough understand that the Democrats also want to be rich. The Democrats are being donated to by other companies, other lobbyists that also want to be rich. And I don't think enough of us want to or are willing to acknowledge that power and money is enough for some people to do the worst of things to other people. We want to believe for some reason that these elected officials have a higher level of morality, a higher level of ethics. However, they have never demonstrated that in a large number. It is like policing. The actual system itself attracts individuals who are not here to lead, here to engage, here to help, but more so attracts individuals who are there to be opportunists. And so we have to collectively change our way of looking at government and our way of looking at what we want for government. And that is why I asked you all to bring your teens here to listen or to send this to your teens, because they are going to be the ones who are going to be shifting that in real time. And what we are going to have to do is to support them in doing it. What we are going to have to do is to use our wisdom and experience to help support their innocence and their rigor. And too many of us are so stuck in our own ignorance and our own unwillingness to expand that we cannot be effective in the things that need to be changed. When I see people arguing or coming into my comments really defending Democrats, I say these are individuals who unfortunately have only gotten their information from mainstream media. And do you know who is behind mainstream media? The same corporations and lobbyists that are behind Democrats. And so we begin to understand that mainstream media is also not here to inform us. They are here to persuade us. In other nations, they are so aware of the role their media and their politicians play. And one of the things that we have to do in this nation is to become aware. I know there are people that say, well, what would you do differently, Amanda? What would you do differently, Amanda? Well, first of all, I'm not running for office because I do not want to be a part of a corrupt system. And nobody that I look up to or that I have charted my path on has been in office.